Hi everyone and welcome to my anime and manga guide. So this is a video that I've wanted to make for a really long time, and this is not a top 10 because I would find that so difficult to do a top 10 anime and manga because I literally watch and love so many. So this is just a few of my favourites that I would suggest to people that haven't watched or read any before. So I'm going to start off with manga, and this is one that people usually don't do rather than don't watch anime. So most people don't read manga and just watch anime, and I'm somebody that does both. Yeah, kind of just sometimes they leave bits out. It's kind of like when they make films out of books and they leave bits out or they do things a little bit differently. It's kind of just nice to sort of go back and read it or see how it's done in the anime. And I read most of my manga on an app called Manga Rock. This is nothing they've asked me to do or anything. I just read all my manga on there. It's a really good app because all the scans are in HD. That is really, really good. And you can change the sources of where they're from, so you can just find manga online through places like Manga Panda, Manga Fox, Manga Reader, whereas this app kind of, you can select different sources from where manga's from, because sometimes not all websites have the full manga, or some don't have certain ones. So this app is so good because you can just find it from all different places. So the first manga I'm going to suggest to you is the very first manga that I read, and it is a manga called Love Hina by Ken Akamatsu. It's about this guy called Kitaro, or Keitaro, I'm not really sure how you'd pronounce it, and pretty much he's failed to get into university about twice now, so his mum and dad aren't supporting him anymore, so he goes to move in with his grandma, and she owns a hotel. And when he gets there, he realises that this hotel has been turned into a girls' dormitory. So there's loads of girls there, and it's just this guy, and he's trying to get into university, and he meets this girl called Naru, who's also trying to get into university, and it's about them sort of working really hard to try and get into university and getting to know each other. He's like a massive geek, he has glasses, he's a bit of a loser, and there's all these different girls there, and how he gets on with all these different characters is just so funny and so good. And obviously it's a bit romance as well, so you kind of like ship him with different characters. You're like, oh, who's he gonna get with? When I first read it, I was on holiday, we went to the shop, and my mum was like, oh, that looks like the stuff you watch on TV, and I was like, oh my god, it's manga. So I bought this book from this random shop, and I read the first book in literally about half an hour, and I was like, can we get a Waterstones please, so I can have a look for some more? So I remember I just spent the majority of my money on these books, and I would just sit there reading them over and over. Like, and obviously that was the first one I ever read, and I would like hold it really high in my heart because it's the first one, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's very funny, very sort of, it's not really school life because most of it happens in the dormitory. So many love triangles and secrets, and it's just so good. The second manga I'm going to suggest to you is a bit more of an action-packed one, and that is Soul Eater. So this manga is written by Atsushi Okabo. I loved the anime, but the manga, I just found it was just incredible. Like, it was just so good. It's drawn how the anime is, so it looks kind of exactly the same. So obviously the art style is really nice anyway. It's about this massive school called Death Master Academy, and it's where you'll either have somebody who is a weapon user or that turns into a weapon. So most of the time they team up together, or you'll have two that team up with one person, and so obviously the user uses the weapon to fight different monsters and things, and every time a monster is killed they will produce a soul. The whole goal of it is that each pair of students is trying to become Death, like Shinigami, the headmaster, his new weapon. And it mainly revolves around this girl called Maka and this guy called Soul. And Maka, she is the daughter of Death's already weapon, but she is a user. Pretty much the whole goal of it, when they're eating these souls, they're supposed to have 99 normal souls and one witch soul, and it starts off where they're trying to get these souls and they kind of just fail, and they're trying really hard and it's not really going anywhere, and it sort of starts off quite light-hearted, and that's the sort of main thing, but it gets really, really deep, like to do with their teachers. Obviously they get a new teacher called Stein. If you've already watched my top 10 anime crushes, you would have seen Stein there. It gets pretty heavy, I think, and the action is really good. And there is this arc where there's this place called Baba Yaga's castle. That is literally one of the best arcs ever. Like, oh my god, the action and the fighting is just so good, and it kind of just becomes more than just these students trying to become obviously Death's new weapon. It's a lot more deep than that. There's lots of secrets about the school, about the headmaster, about different students and teachers, and when you learn these things it's like, oh my god. And the thing that really annoys me about the anime, because it was so good, they changed the ending because I think it ended before the manga had ended. I wouldn't regard the end of the manga to be brilliant, but there is something that happens right after the anime finishes that is just like blew my mind. And it's not in the anime, and people that have just watched the anime and haven't read the manga are gonna miss out on that. And I just remember reading it like, oh my god. And the third manga I'm gonna suggest to you is my favorite manga of all time. So obviously this is gonna be in here, and just really quickly, this is in like no particular order, this is just kind of random order. But this manga is my favorite manga of all time, and I'm actually reading it again right now. It's one of the only mangas I've read like multiple times because I love it so much. And this manga is called Hironaka no Ryusei by Mika Yamamori. And this manga is a shoujo manga, so it's romance, and it's mainly all about that. So if you don't like romance manga, you're probably not gonna like it. But to start it off, it's about this girl called Suzume who moves from the country to Tokyo because her parents are moving away to do with her dad's job, and she's a bit weird, she doesn't really talk to people. And she moves to Tokyo and she meets this guy called Shishio, who it turns out to be her teacher. And she falls in love with him, and it's pretty much about her sort of coming to terms with her love for Shishio. And then she also meets this other guy called Mamura, who she sits next to at school, who really doesn't like girls, and it's kind of a bit of a love triangle between those three. I won't give any spoilers away about what happens, but obviously you get from the start that she's in love with Shishio. And oh my god, Shishio and Mamura are like two of like the most perfect 2D boys ever. They're like my two different types. Obviously Shishio is really tall and dark and really funny and really cute, and Mamura is really blonde and sort of like he's really grumpy. And lots of people don't really like Suzume that much, but I really liked her as a main character. I think she's really sweet, she's really innocent and pure, and she's like she has a really good heart, and it just, oh, she's so sweet. And I really like the ending to this manga, and the whole thing is just so good. I literally just did not stop reading it. After each chapter, it just left me thinking, well, I just need to read the next one now. And all the side characters as well, you kind of ship them, and there's like different things that happen, and it's just such a nice manga. So the fourth I'm going to suggest is actually another shoujo manga, and that is Tonari no Kaibutsukun by Robiko Shizuki. And this is about a girl called Shizuku who is really into studying. That's all she does with her life. She literally has like no friends. She just studies, and she wants to be the #1 student at the school. But there's another #1 student. He kind of barely shows up, just takes the exam, and is #1. And she's never met this student at all, ever. And one day at school, they give her some homework to take to this student. She's like, all right, I'm gonna go find this student. And it turns out to be this guy called Haru, who's really chill, lazy, doesn't really do anything, but he's ridiculously smart. And she gets very annoyed with this guy because she's like, well, how has he like become like the #1 student? They become friends after a while. He falls in love with her instantly and starts coming to school, and she's just like, oh, this guy, just leave me alone. And their relationship is just so good because they're both two really awkward people, and about them coming together, becoming friends, and maybe a bit more than friends if you go and read it. And then they make other friends as well who you kind of ship, and it's just a lot of shipping all year round. And it's a really good manga because you really see how the characters grow, and it's just, it's a really nice story, and I really like it. And the end was really good too. The art style as well I thought was drawn really nice. Obviously you're gonna realise I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to art styles of like anime and manga, so if it doesn't look nice I'm sometimes a bit like but yeah, it was drawn really nice. And I really like both of the main characters. Haru is like, dark hair, and he's like really skinny and sort of a bit rough, but he's also ridiculously cute. And about him making friends, everyone's scared of him, so because obviously he looks really mean, but he's just so sweet. And Shizuki like brings it out of him, and it's just so good. And the next manga I'm going to suggest to you is one you've probably heard of, and that is Naruto by Masashi Kishimoto. So most people probably know the story of Naruto, and most people have probably watched it, but I think the manga as one big whole is just so incredible because it's one of the first mangas that I've read where it's actually finished while I've been reading it every week. I watched all of the main series, and then I stopped at Shippuden and I didn't watch it. And then one day when I was at college, I was like, well, you know, I'm just gonna start reading the manga. And majority of my college life, I would sit in the library and just read the Naruto manga until I caught up, and then every week I'd just sit and read it. There were a lot of ups and downs in Naruto. Like sometimes it was ridiculously good, and sometimes you're a bit like, oh, Naruto, pick yourself up, come on. So it's a very like a roller coaster of good and bad, that manga. But as a whole, I would say it's probably a ridiculously amazing manga. The art style became a lot more like the anime, which I thought was really good. But obviously you can see how it improved and sort of adapted. That's like all I can really say about it, to be honest. Obviously most people know the story about Naruto. He's this little kid and he has no family and no parents, and he wants to become Hokage. And it's pretty much about his story, about how he sort of like works his way up from being being like just an average student to becoming really good, and whether he becomes the Hokage or not, you'll have to read it and see. And so the next one I'm going to suggest is one by a person you probably already know really well, and it's a manga called Rave Master by Hiro Mashima. So if you didn't know who that was, he wrote the manga of Fairy Tail. That is a ridiculously popular manga, so if you really like Fairy Tail and you've read Fairy Tail or you've watched Fairy Tail, definitely go back and read this manga, because in my personal opinion I would regard this manga as one of the most perfect mangas that has ever been brought out. It is full of action, it's full of sadness, it's full of romance, it is literally got everything. It's the whole package, and the ending is just so good. Literally, I can't even describe how good this manga is. And it seems to me that he kind of wrote this manga and then wrote Fairy Tail, and a lot of the characters and things in Fairy Tail are from Rave Master. The whole thing is just incredible because it never drops from that sort of like level of being amazing, and then it just ends at such a good time. And I think if they'd have carried it on, it probably would not have been as good. It's probably one of the only mangas as well that's really made me cry. There is one bit in the middle that you find out about one of these characters, and literally just welling up just thinking about it because it's just so sad. Like, it's just such a good manga. Oh, I'm like crying. So it starts off with this really big war that happened in the past, and it's about the Rave Master who has a sword with all these different gemstones in it, and he summons like a meteor to kind of win the war, but at the same time it sets off a massive explosion. All the Rave stones that are in the sword get scattered like all over the world, and there's no more Rave Masters. And then it kind of skips to present day, where this kid called Haru is living on an island, and he's kind of really bored with his life. His parents have sort of gone, he just lives with his sister, so he's just kind of a bit bummed out, like, oh, life is really boring. And then the original Rave Master, who had the sword at the beginning, turns up, and he's a bit like, oh, I'm gonna give the sword to you, you can fight these bad guys. Obviously that's a really bad explanation of it because it's been a really long time since I've read it. It's pretty much about Haru's journey around the world getting these different Rave stones. He meets loads of different characters and they have loads of different personalities, a lot of which you'll see from Fairy Tail, but the main girl called Ellie, she's lost her memory, and she kind of goes with Haru to try and get her memory back. And when you find out where she's from, it is literally the best thing ever. Like, I just can't even begin to explain how mind blown I was, because this manga is just so in depth and like interwoven, things that happened that you're like, oh my god, I missed that, and things that sort of like link together, and it's to do with like past and present and all these different things that happen, or how the characters all connect together. It's just so incredible, and you should definitely read it. Even if you just take one manga away from this whole video, you should read Rave Master because it is just so good. So this next section that I'm going to talk about now is anime. So if you didn't care about any of the manga stuff, now I'm going to talk about anime. So I watch most of my anime on Crunchyroll, and that is something I have on my PlayStation that I pay for monthly, and all the anime that you get is lovely because it's all in HD, it's all there in front of you, you can pick and watch different things, you can add things to your queue. It's just such an easy thing to have, and I also have it on my phone and my computer, so I can pretty much watch anime wherever I want, whenever I want. And I'll know exactly what episode I'm on and where I'm at. So the first anime that I'm going to suggest to you is my first anime that I first got into, and I wouldn't class as ones I watched as a child as ones I first got into. Obviously the standard ones like Pokemon, Digimon, Sailor Moon, Shaman King, like all those kinds of ones that I watched when I was really young. And so a few years later, when I was about 10 or 11, my best friend Jem told me to start watching Naruto on a channel called Jetix, which used to be Fox Kids, which showed all these other animes. And when I first started watching it, I was a bit like, I'm not really into this, Jem. Why are you suggesting it to me? And then I think a couple of weeks later it was on TV, and I just got home from school and I was like, I'll just watch it. And it was straight into on the first stage of the exams in Naruto, and I was just instantly hooked. And it was the first anime I was completely obsessed with. And I bought the DVDs, I bought t-shirts, I literally bought everything. And although I've already suggested the manga to you, this was my very first anime. And the original series of Naruto, this is what I'm suggesting, not Shippuden. I originally watched all of the, I'd say, first 2 or 3 seasons on TV, to the point where I got to the third stage of the exams and where I had to start watching it on YouTube in parts because they didn't show it on TV anymore. There's this one fight as well between 2 characters called Lee and Gaara in the third stage of the exams. I would regard that as still the best fight in any anime I've ever seen. It is absolutely incredible, and even if you just go and watch that one scene, it's just so good, to the point where I was just like on the edge of my seat the whole time. I was like, Jesus Christ, what's gonna happen? I love this anime, and it holds a very strong place to me in manga and anime, because obviously it's kind of like a first for lots of things, and oh, I love Naruto. And so the second one I'm going to suggest to you is probably my favourite anime of all time, and that is Haikyuu. And in my last video I said it was my second favourite, but I kind of just decided that I'm absolutely obsessed with Haikyuu, so it's kind of overtaken my favourite one, and now it's at the #1 spot. So Haikyuu is my favourite anime of all time, and it's about this guy called Hinata who wants to play volleyball, and at his school there's no volleyball club, so he kind of has to try really hard and put this team together of people that don't really play volleyball, and he actually goes to a proper game, and there he kind of gets beat by this really big team, and it has a guy on it called Kageyama, who is my favourite 2D boy of all time. He is my bae, I love him, and everyone calls him the king of the court because he's really horrible and he's really controlling. He likes things done his way, and pretty much in that first sort of episode you get the idea that they're going to be head to head, they're going to be on different teams, different schools, like fighting to #1, and then the next thing you know they both enroll in the same high school and they have to work together to get to the nationals. And it's pretty much about their relationship and about how they get on, how they learn to sort of deal with people and play volleyball together, and it's just so good. And on their team there's just so many different characters, and you learn to love each one of them for their different traits. You learn their backstories, even the characters that don't play, even the ones on the different teams. You just love everyone because they're all so unique and so sweet. Although it's about sports, I find it really funny and really sad at the same time. There are points when you just feel so sad for the characters but also laugh so hard at some of the things they do. And so the next one that I'm going to suggest to you actually was my favourite until Haikyuu sort of like knocked it off the post, and that is Kill la Kill. And Kill la Kill was made by the people that did Gurren Lagann, so if you like Gurren Lagann you're definitely going to like Kill la Kill. And one of the things that sort of like really swayed me about this anime was the soundtrack, and it's by Hiroyuki Sawano, and he did the soundtrack for Guilty Crown, Attack on Titan, and the soundtrack is just so amazing, and it just really builds the anime up, and it's just such an incredible soundtrack. Like if you're walking or driving you just feel like a beast because you just got that playing in the background, and it's incredible. The animation and the style of this anime is just so different to anything I've ever watched. It kind of looks like really roughly drawn, but the fighting is just, oh my god, it's awesome, and it really sort of like bumps up the level of these girls. Like when they're fighting you think they're really cute, really sweet, and they've got these little sailor outfits on, and then they suddenly just like turn into these outfits that are really short and really like, oh my god, how are they fighting in these outfits? But they're both ridiculously hench. And the main story is about this girl called Ryuko who is trying to find out who killed her father, and she enrolls at the school with this one scissor, and she's pretty much just like, oi, Satsuki, who is the headmaster. Well, she kind of invented the school, so she's kind of like the headmistress, but she's also the head girl. It's really hard to describe, but so she kind of bowls up at this school and was like, hey Satsuki, tell me who killed my daddy. And at this school each student has a uniform, and each uniform sort of ranks up, so the higher level your uniform the more abilities you have. And Ryuka kind of goes back to her old house and she finds this uniform that her dad made, so it's all like really hench and really weird, and it actually has a personality and it talks to her and only she can hear it, and his name is Sangetsu, and oh my god. The feels, because Sangetsu is just such a good character even though he's just a uniform, and a lot of it is about how she sort of like deals with Sangetsu, about their relationship, how they work together, and about her sort of like dealing with different things that happens that she finds out to do with her dad, to do with the school. Satsuki is such an incredible character because at first you sort of hate her, then you kind of like her, then you hate her again, and it kind of has like a bit of a twist in it as well that you don't expect, which I personally didn't expect. So the next one I'm going to suggest to you, you probably saw an Amazing Phil's anime video, and that is Parasite Maxim. And I would say this anime for me is kind of like how Rave is in the manga world. It's very sort of like all round, the full package. There's a bit of romance, a bit of sadness, a bit of fighting. It kind of has everything, and the soundtrack is ridiculously good too. It's all like dubstep and it's so good. It's pretty much about this guy called Shinichi, and it's about him dealing with this weird alien that comes down. Pretty much their goal is to take over the human body and then take over the world, but he kind of captures it as it gets to like his arm, and it kind of lives in his hand, and it's about him dealing with the relationship with him and this thing in his hand called Migi. Loads of stuff happened that I did not expect, and he kind of really grows as a character throughout the series. Like at the start he's really wimpy, he wears glasses, he's afraid of bugs, and by the end of it he's just hench because he kind of just can't deal with any shit any longer, and it's really full on all the time. There's no fillers. And the next one I'm going to suggest to you is more of a light-hearted one, and it's Gintama. So if you've never seen this anime before, it is ridiculously popular in Japan. It's a really long series, and it has random arcs. It's not really a main storyline for it, and it is probably one of the funniest animes I've ever watched. It is ridiculously funny. Some of the episodes are just so random, and it's really hard to explain the actual main story of it because there isn't one. To sort of like roughly sum it up, it's set in an Edo period in the future, so there's aliens, there's flying cars, spaceships and all sorts, but there's also like samurais and kendo and all sorts of things. And it's about this guy called Gintoki who has an odd job shop, and he has two people that work there with him, that's Shinpachi and Kagura, who both have completely different backgrounds that just work with him doing loads of random crap, and it's about their adventures. It's so light-hearted and funny, and there's so many different characters that sort of come back in each episode, and it is just so funny. And if you haven't watched it, I would definitely recommend it, and you could just start from any old episode because most of the time there are no arcs, but the action in it, when there is action, is just so good. It's crazy how it can go from completely funny, light-hearted and blah 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 to completely full-on action-packed serious fighting. There are so many 2D boys in it too. And so the last one I'm going to suggest to you, you probably would have seen in other places as well, and that is Ouran High School Host Club. And that is about a girl called Haruhi who enrolls in this really posh school through a scholarship, and she bowls into this room where she just wants to read, she just wants to study, and she knocks over a really expensive vase, and it happens to be in the room of the host club where all these really pretty boys entertain girls. So they see this happen and they say to her, Haruhi, you really need to pay us back for this. And at this point they haven't realised that she's a girl, they think she's a guy. So they say, well, you're just going to work for the host club then. And it kind of like throughout the whole episodes they kind of just realise that she's a girl, and so by the end of it she's working for the host club even though she's a girl and she looks like a guy. And it's kind of about her getting on with each of these characters and being in the host club at the same time, and it's just such a funny anime. Also you kind of ship her with these different characters because there's loads of romance in it as well, but there's not too much, that's the thing. And there's loads of different funny characters in it, each one's completely different. There's like a princely character, there's a really cute little kawaii character, there's a really tall silent character, there's a glasses character that deals with the accounts, and I love Haruhi as well. She's such a good character. She kind of reminds me of Suzume a little bit from Hironaka no Ryusei. She has a really good heart. She just wants to get on with her work and live her life. She doesn't want to be here with this host club, but then kind of realizes that she really enjoys it. Her life would not be as fun as it is if it wasn't for all of these friends, and it's so nice to watch, and you kind of feel like part of the host club when you watch it. So I hope you liked this anime and manga guide that I've given you. These are all just my personal opinions, so please don't think that these are all like completely right. And I know I haven't described some of these animes and mangas at their full sort of amazingness. I find it really hard to describe things sometimes, so I'll just say, oh, it's really good, so please watch it. You can see I'm really passionate about it, which means I love it so much. So I really hope you go and read one of these mangas or watch one of these animes, and if you do, leave me a comment down below of what you think. And as well, leave me some comments of anime and manga that you really like that I haven't talked about here, because I really enjoy like watching other people's anime suggestions and reading manga that people have suggested. I really hope you like this video. If you do, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to me and Claire for some more anime and manga videos that I will hopefully be bringing out in the future. I hope you have a nice day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!